Good evening and welcome. My name is Taylor Kingman, President of the Board of Trustees for San Angelo ISD. I would like to welcome all of you who are present at tonight's regular board meeting, as well as those who will be watching the recording online or on our public access channel. Today is June 15th. All items on tonight's agenda have been posted as required by state law, and most items have been discussed in our earlier pre-agenda workshop. As our board, our work includes setting goals, hearing reports from our superintendent, approving budgets, contracts, and personnel items, making policy decisions for the district. Please keep in mind that this is a meeting of the board held in public and not a meeting of the public. These proceedings are recorded and will become part of the district's permanent record. To help us maintain a clear recording, please refrain from speaking while others have the floor, and please silence your cell phones. Thank you again for being here and for your support of SASD. We do have a quorum, and we'll begin with our first item on the agenda, which is our invocation. Mike Hernandez, who's executive pastor at Celebration Church, is going to help us with that.
Good afternoon. Will y'all pray with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you that you first loved us. Thank you, Lord, that all you ask of us is to love others and love you. Lord, we invite you into this space today and ask you lead and guide the conversations taking place. Open our eyes, open our ears, but especially our hearts to your prompting of what would benefit everyone. Help us, Lord, during this time of discussion to take ourselves out of the equation and simply look to you for guidance and direction in Jesus' name. Lord, your word says, where two or three are gathered in thy name, there you are. Hear our prayer, Lord, and allow us not to feel like we have to carry the burden, for it is not for us to carry. Lord, I ask that you continue to take care of this board, the staff, the faculty, but especially the entire student body, for after all, these meetings ultimately affect those the most. Help us to focus on what is best for each and every student in Jesus' name. Lord, send the Holy Spirit to protect and comfort all those whom are affected by these procedures and these decisions. Allow us to be united and not divided. Help us to focus on providing the best environment for the students as they continue their education. I ask for wisdom and discernment for everyone involved in leading the San Angelo Independent School District. Help us all, Lord, to realize your yoke is easy and your burden is light. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to do the pledges to the United States and Texas. Everyone please join standing. All right. Next on our agenda this evening is recognitions, and we're going to start with Shannon Schwartz, who's going to help us with recognition of the Central High School Indoor Percussion Program.
All right. If you are part of CHIP, if y'all could go ahead and stand in the middle here for me. Yeah. There's a few of them, so it may take a minute. Perfect. Awesome. Well, good evening. Tonight, we're pleased to recognize the students of Central High School Indoor Percussion, known as CHIP, for their outstanding achievement at the Winter Guard International World Championships in Dayton, Ohio. This year, CHIP reached a significant milestone in program history by advancing to the WGI semifinals for the first time ever. The ensemble went on to earn designation as a world finalist, placing them among the top indoor percussion programs in the nation. Competing against some of the country's most accomplished programs, these students demonstrated exceptional skill, discipline, and commitment throughout the season. Their success reflects the countless hours that they devoted to rehearsals, performances, and preparation, as well as the high standards that they have set for themselves and their program. And now we'd like to introduce the members of CHIP. David Moran, Aiden Martin, Halo Zamora, Jacoby Hyatt, Riley Henry, Jade Perez, Micah Flores, Liam Allen, Emmanuel Armendariz, Liliana Ruiz, Emma Granoth, Raylan Harper, Ryan Wheeler, Sheridan Bentley, Allie Flint, Hazel Tyler, Sunny Gatika, Zayden Leal, Christian Sanchez, Jackson Eubanks, Kaya Nyakunika, Jonathan Hendricks, Parker Sarabian, Evelette Hernandez, Ashlyn Anastasio, Rylan Marburger, Preston Rivera, Samantha Contreras, Carly Howell, Jimmy Osborne, Cameron Sargent, Tristan Chavez, Bailey Vanderbeck, Dylan Ochoa, and Dominic Jones. The ensemble is under the direction of Mr. Daniel Villanueva and Mr. Caleb Leonard. Please join me in congratulating Chip. And before we shake the board's hand, we're going to take a picture, so we might have to do 3 rows with everyone in there.
So if you guys could just slide right over here and start the session.
You ready to go? Good job. Oh.
Next on our agenda is recognition of student scholarship, and Ms. Fincher's going to help us with that.
Good evening, Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, and Board of Trustees. I'm proud to serve as the Director of Career and Technical Education for San Angelo ISD. And tonight I'm proud to share the impact of a partnership between the San Angelo ISD CT Department and Johnson & Johnson MedTech, formerly known as Ethicon. This partnership was created and started 4 years ago, created to introduce our students to real-world opportunities in science, technology, engineering, math, manufacturing, and design, and to connect classroom learning to high-demand careers right here in San Angelo. Through this partnership, students have had the ability to explore careers in engineering and advanced manufacturing, to learn about post-secondary pathways through Angelo State University and Howard College, to engage directly with industry professionals and gain firsthand experience through tours of Johnson & Johnson MedTech. These experiences move students beyond awareness to truly envision themselves in these careers, also while building a strong workforce pipeline for our community. Students have gained access to internships, scholarships, and direct connections to industry, and the impact made is already clear. Since 2022, Johnson & Johnson MedTech has awarded scholarships to our seniors totaling $160,000. This is an incredible investment in their futures. And tonight we are honored to continue that tradition. At this time, I would like to invite David Quiros, Senior Director of Operations for Johnson & Johnson MedTech San Angelo, and Jessica Soto, Human Resources Leader, to come forward. As Mr. Quiros comes forward, I would also like to take a moment to recognize him for a special honor that he doesn't know about. As the Area 12 President for the Career and Technical Association of Texas, I had the privilege of nominating Mr. Quiros for recognition, which honors leaders in business and industry who champion career and technical education and help develop a strong future-ready workforce. Mr. Quiros, thank you for your leadership and your continued commitment to our students. And congratulations on being named the 2026 Texas Area 12 Champion for CTE Award recipient. And now I will turn it over to David Quiros to continue with the presentation of this year's scholarship.
Thank you, Roseanne. Honestly, I'm still in shock. So I like surprises. Don't worry about it. So, you know, as Roseanne mentioned, everything started like 4 years ago. It was a dream. Let's be honest. It was a dream coming true. As many industry, we suffer about bringing talent into our site. And we started changing that vision by developing the early talent that we have in San Angelo. So as of now, we have sponsored 5 students. We offered them $20,000 for 4 years. But besides that, they can come during the summer and do their summer job with us. And they also can come back and do the co-op for the major that they're pursuing. So it has been an amazing journey, and hopefully in the future we can hire all these students in our site. But it's not only in our site. I believe that we have a need in our community. So whoever doesn't work for us in the future, we want them to work in San Angelo. So we need that ambition, and we need them to keep pursuing that technology mindset to bring the city to the next level, okay? So for this year, I'm going to be making the announcement on who's winning the award. Of course, it was very difficult, and always the team comes back to me and tell me, oh, what about if we do this and we do that? They try to do like a brainwash on me on how we can manage this. But let's be honest, we have to make selections. So for this year, we're going to start, it's actually Laurie O'Donnell. She's here. Can you come over? Congratulations, Laurie. Laurie's going to study mechanical engineering, and she's going to go to Texas A&M in Galveston. Is that right? So congratulations. So what about if we take a picture? But this is not the end, because we also have another special, person that is winning the scholarship, and that's why I mentioned my team is always doing like a brainwash on me, and the leadership team. But in this case, we're going to recognize with the scholarship to Fiona Reedy. I'm sorry, Joseph, but you have to come over here as well. Joseph Davis, he also won the scholarship. So we decided to give not only one, 3 scholarships this year. I just want to say, to finish, to say thank you. And you guys are doing amazing with the talent that you guys been developing in the San Angelo School District. Congratulations.
All right. Again, just thank you to Johnson & Johnson for doing that for our kids. That's amazing. Next is public comment. And we do have one person sign up to speak this evening. For those speaking tonight, please remember to follow the guidelines you received when you signed in and were displayed on the screen before the meeting began. Our speaker tonight is Jamal Schumpert, and it's regarding enrollment and finance suggestions.
Good evening, board. Jamal Schumpert. I was looking at the video last week, and I noticed y'all was looking at enrollment. I think Ms. Duncan is right about the enrollment. We're going to continue to have this problem, but I think it's also because public school districts legitimized the online software. The online software was used in multiple school districts as curriculum, and they started not using the books. I think y'all might have heard of it as a paperless way to learn and digital learning. Well, too much of that actually legitimized during the pandemic all those educational softwares. So now, believe it or not, they have more than enough money to stand on their own. They actually overpay a lot of their people who created the curriculum, who only took it from teachers who were teaching in really good school districts. So, I mean, that kind of is an issue. Parents have that legitimized software by public schools, online software to homeschool their parents. It wasn't something y'all did on purpose. It was an unintentional consequence. Another thing to kind of raise money, maybe during the football games at halftime, you have 10 contestants charged, have a raffle, but you only pick 10 contestants and have them kick for cash. Have them kick at the 10 or the 15, the 25, and maybe the 30, 3 kicks for $100. I don't think a lot of people will make it, so you'll probably make a profit just off of the raffle. Another thing is modern music routines. A lot of the band music I hear is traditional, is good. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to get a younger crowd in, sometimes the modern music, I'm not saying hip hop, but believe it or not, Ella Langley has a pretty good song about Abilene. This is the Concho Valley area. I would love to hear that song played by a band here, especially Central's band. They have the talent. I'm pretty sure if the director had to, freedom, he would. And culinary students. While you're actually at the game, some of it's regular concession stand food. Sometimes maybe we should involve the culinary students in the concession stand food, and so that we could take more of the profit instead of having to pay to get some of that stuff shipped in. And another thing is we close down schools. I think it would be worth an opportunity to look in a feasibility study to see how much it would cost to get some of these closed schools up and running as a community cafe. That way you could build profits off of that. I would look more into the enterprise funds and how you could change them to benefit you, maybe two or $3 million or $2 million a year. That's all I was saying. And also in the auto industry, the right to repair will possibly affect your program on just the repairing part of the mechanics. Thank you. In the CTE. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have some information items this evening. First is going to be a bond construction update, and Mr. Wayner with KFW Architects is going to help us with that.
Good evening, Dr. Brandon, Dr. Gomez, Dr. Moran, and Board of Trustees. Thank you all for having me. A quick update, we just on the two projects that we are working on for Lakeview Concession. The concession building, we issued the construction documents, I think as you know, on March 20th. We received bids on April 15th. And then on April 19th, the contract was awarded by you guys. And then we are currently awaiting final permit review from the city of San Angelo. That should be coming, we hope, any day now. We've been in contact, Lee Lewis has been in contact with the city permitting department. And it's, I think they said, it's up to the last couple departments needing their review. Everything seems to be going well in that regard. We're currently also reviewing various product submittals, mostly in the MEP realm, so that trying to get those turned around quickly so that the trade partners can get their material ordered and get that moving quickly. So I believe that mobilization, you'll start seeing stuff out there pretty soon. I think Lilos has ordered their construction fence or temporary fencing, and in pretty short order they'll be moving their job trailer out there, hopefully in the next week or two. At Fannin, we issued construction documents on May 29th, which was a little over 2 weeks ago. We're currently answering pre-bid RFIs from the contractor that were submitted to the construction manager from various interested parties and bidders. There was a pre-bid walkthrough last week where interested subcontractors or trade partners were able to walk through the campus, and that's generated some RFIs and some questions that we're answering, turning around pretty quickly. We just answered, I think, 15 of them today. So that Lee Lewis is currently soliciting those bids from these trade partners. I believe it'll be next week then when they'll get those bids finalized and hopefully have a GMP to you guys shortly. Permit application will be submitted this week. They tell me, and then upcoming, once the GMP is delivered, they'll be able to begin construction and mobilization and start moving dirt early part of next month. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Wayner?
What all is going to be located in that concessions, at Lakeview Concessions, other than concessions?
There will be, so that front building that you're seeing right there is the ticket booth. So that's where all the ticketing sales and the point of sale will be for those. Then in the concession building in the back there is the concession space itself, which will have refrigerators, sinks, a warming cabinet, and prep area. And then connected to that is a storage that will have a freezer, cooler, ice maker, as well as a lot of shelving for dry goods storage. Then around the corner from there, if you're looking, I guess, to y'all's right, around the corner towards, that would be the football field and the baseball and the softball field, is going to be group restrooms, men and women on either side. And then around on the back, on the south side of the building towards the main campus will be officiating changing rooms for officials, referees, and umpires, so they can come in and change into their official gear from wherever they're coming from. Yes, sir.
This may not be a KFW question, so I'll look around to Carl. Do we need to plan on having the GMP on I know we typically try and do things on our regular agenda items, but we may want to try and if we can get that for our pre-agenda, just so it's not delayed till the end of July by our meeting. I think trying to get by that date, if that works, give them another week to work on Fannin maybe in.
I will contact Lee Lewis tomorrow and see when they're planning on being ready, and then we'll find the next board date for you guys, whether that's a pre-agenda or regular meeting. I believe it probably would be the pre-agenda. So yes, we can make that work.
Don't want it to be our fault when we don't, for keeping things on the timeline. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Weiner.
Thank you all.
All right. Dr. Gomez, as we discussed last week, update on academic programs. So just for our public, last week we got our MAP data, and this week we are going to start working on through preliminary STAR data.
Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, and members of the board, we're switching over. This is really hard to read on the screen, so each one of you have a copy at your seats. I want to reiterate what Dr. Kingman just said. These are preliminary scores, and it's very important we all recognize we will not have official accountability until August 15th. I'm going to give one example of why this is important. You may have heard this was not unique only to San Angelo ISD, but throughout the state of Texas this school year, TA automatically hand-reviewed extended constructed responses that were 1 point away from the next performance level. Okay, so you're saying, what does that mean? So they went back through, and this is where students write multiple paragraph responses demonstrating comprehension, analysis, and evidence. So for our district, for example, we had 455 students that were automatically rescored because they were 1 point away. Of those 455, 110 students had an increase. Those increases are not reflected in these scores. So I'm going to give you an even further breakdown. For did not meets, 2 approaches, 31 went up. 2 approaches. Of approaches to meet, 38 students went up. And then meets to masters, 41 students. That will have a positive impact on the scores that I'm sharing with you this evening. Okay, and again, those scores will not be reflected until we receive our final reports, which are due to districts the end of July. Just think it's important because some districts kind of share early, but then that can be confusing to the public when you have to come back and change what was originally reported. So, but it's also important that we give you the information that we currently have. So on the sheet in front of you, you're going to see by content area, and on your left-hand side is this current spring, and the right-hand side is last spring. And then I know we talk a whole lot in education in terms that don't always make sense to those outside of education. So the state breaks down scores into different categories. You have approaches, and while, yes, technically, a student that approaches, they pass the test, but it's a very basic understanding. So they're highly likely to still have struggles with that grade level content. So it is our expectation in San Angelo ISD that we're moving, that meets is our minimum. We're looking at students that meet or master. I tell you this because as a board and as those watching and as parents, for our students as they go through the system to be involved in advanced classes such as honors, advanced dual credit, they need to be reaching the meets and masters levels to work through a course of that level of difficulty, okay? So just keep in mind, we've really tried to shift that meets is our minimum expectation. Now for color coding, because I know those that are watching are in the audience, those numbers are really hard to see on the screen. Anywhere where there is green, the district saw an increase based on the preliminary data. And we already know we will have some changes based on the RLA rescoring that I started off with. Masters is the highest level of achievement, and we definitely had a commitment that we wanted to see more students reaching the very highest levels. You hear us often talk about our points of pride with our course offerings, our dual credit, which we also recognize this evening. So we don't want our students to just pass and get by. We want our students performing at the highest level each individual student can possibly perform. So I'm going to just stop for a second for RLA. I'm not going to read each column to you because I know you can see that. And I'm just going to summarize that for all levels except 4th and 6th, we saw increases. Why this is important is right now this is preliminary data and we have nothing to compare it to except our data from last spring. When we receive region data and just state data, that will be even more important for us in those grade levels. That's why it's important, yes, that you always look at your own data, but you look at the region and the state as a whole. Then when you look in math, before I go into a deeper dive for math, we've had multiple conversations about the state's change for accelerated math, including those 7th graders that are on an advanced track, what test they're taking. So what this means is our highest 7th grade math students are not included in the 7th grade math data. While yes, that was a significant change for our district and a significant decrease from this spring and last spring, you're not measuring the same things. So you have a population of students where their data was not included in 7th grade math. Does that, making sure everyone's tracking with me on that. This is one area that we've heard from every district that we've spoken to saw dramatic changes in their 7th grade scores. Again, the reason why we have to say it's preliminary and why receiving the statewide data will be super impactful. I also want to pause just for a minute and talk about Algebra 1. Last school year, we piloted the high-quality instructional material with Algebra 1. And I know we had a lot of conversations with the board and with parents. And then in full transparency, we expected to see higher student outcomes in spring of 25 scores for Algebra 1. And we did not see that on that first year's assessment with the resource. But we're definitely seeing those improved student outcomes with teachers now having multiple years working in the resource. So that is definitely a point of pride for Algebra 1 scores. When you look at science, this was not a mistake that we excluded 5th grade and 8th grade science scores for you. Currently, we only have biology, and that's because the state has not released cut scores, and cut scores are the official thresholds for approaches, meets, and masters. Again, another reason why data right now is preliminary, and we are not slated to have that information until late July. And then moving on to social studies, that was also a big change for the district this year with our expansion of teacher incentive allotment. And social studies is the one content area where the state has not approved an instructional resource in an extended amount of time. So we made the local decision to provide a new resource for our 8th grade social studies and our U.S. history teachers for alignment. We've extended that for the 26-27 school year to include world history as well. Today, communication went out to parents about accessing their student scores for grades 3 through 8, as those will be made available for parents on the 16th. And last week, parents were able to access their end of course scores for students. So our communications team has sent that information out. It's been out on our social media and messages went out to families, but it's just a reminder, local districts don't control when parents can access their student scores. That's made available by the agency themselves. So end of course, if you have a student who took a test, that's already been available for parents of students in grades 3 through 8. Parents will be able to access their individual student scores by June 16th. So that's just an overview, very preliminary. Obviously, we want to see green, and we're happy that we see green. However, we also recognize we still have a commitment to continued growth, and again, that goal being an increase in meets or masters. Any initial questions I might can answer?
Questions for Dr. Gomez?
Yes, Dr. Gomez, excuse me. Will the district be able to provide us more detailed breakdown of each campus and their scores instead of just an overall grade?
Yes, right now, so we got just initial scores last Thursday, and we've been going through those. But we will, as we have done throughout the year, especially our campuses involved in school improvement. It's a little hard. Even I had a call with our TEA representative today for our school improvement campuses, and she understands, in working with our district and others, that it's very hard for us to have anything definite, as we're still awaiting cut scores for science and with the rescoring of RLA assessments. But yes, ma'am, you most certainly will. And we will give a formal presentation in August when we have all final data.
Okay, so you're thinking maybe August we will have that?
We won't have anything formal until the very end of July. And so the way the calendar falls, it would be in August. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And just speaking about the student improvement, the schools that are on student improvement, two of my schools are Bradford and Bel Air. Can you just refresh my memory, please, of what year both of those schools are in?
They were in year 3 this year.
Both of them are year 3?
We're in year 3. We can't speak beyond that if they're coming off or if they're going into year 4.
But so far, 3. And by year 4, if they get to year 4, what happens then? It's just a different improvement plan?
It is a different improvement plan. Most certainly, we don't want anyone to get to year 5, and so the urgency and the district commitment for support is increased if a campus stays in continued school improvement.
Okay, because should it get to year 5, what happens then?
Then that's when TEA could appoint a board of managers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions?
Farrah, was this the first year in math that the advanced students took the grade above star?
Yes.
This is the first year. Okay, so I think that is important to know. I know you said that, but just to really, because that to me was a huge, so if you're in 6th grade, you took the 7th grade star.
No, if you're in 6th grade, it's the way the curriculum is taught.
6th grade advanced.
You still took 6th grade.
You still took 6th grade.
If you were in 7th grade, you took 8th grade.
Okay, so 6th still took 6th.
And but 8th took Algebra 1, if they were in the advanced.
Yes.
So, this kind of might be a weird question. Do we know, or do you know why a 6th grader would still take 6th, but a 7th grader?
Yes, ma'am. It's by the acceleration and the amount of TEKS that they've covered for the assigned grade level. Because you're teaching 3 years of curriculum in 2.
Okay. And 7th and 8th are taught in 7th.
Correct.
6th, because there's so many new TEKS, the bulk of it is 6th. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Farrah.
Other questions for Dr. Gomez? I have one, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so obviously there's a lot of changing the goalpost as far as 7th grade math. As far as the easiest way for me to think about is comparing them to last year. But that doesn't change the fact that we have 7th graders who are not where we need them to be. What is our plan for 7th grade math and those next 8th grade year math next year as far as trying to get those kids where we need them to be?
So it's very individualized based on the middle school campus, but first and foremost, it comes down to the teacher in that classroom. The most valuable individual is the teacher, and they are closest connected to the students. So as we are still rapidly pursuing qualified candidates, this is a reality that all of us in the district face. Currently, we have 20 elementary vacancies and we have 34 secondary vacancies. And we've referred to this before about strategic staffing. Going back to Ms. Cardenas's question about schools and school improvement, there have been 3 occasions so far, and it's about to be another, where we've had to tell all principals we have a pause on hiring until we can fill a candidate at this campus that's in school improvement. It's our responsibility to make sure that we have staffed all campuses, but we have a greater commitment to those campuses that are under school improvement, and also to teams that could potentially be facing brand new teachers across the board. That is going to impact the supports we can provide students. While yes, they all have an aligned resource, and that's a beauty of an aligned resource, you can't take away the skill set of an experienced teacher with a new teacher. So going back to your question, it is individualized, but I could also give you historical data for the state. 7th grade math historically has been the lowest level in middle school.
Sounds like a plan. Other questions?
It was also our first year for Bluebonnet.
For 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, it was the first year of implementation. Yes, ma'am?
And I'm sure parents saw that the rigor for a grade level advanced is much higher. We haven't seen the test this year, but I'm assuming the test was based on how Bluebonnet was taught since it's the state assessment. So we're asking our children to really be deep thinkers, and it is challenging from 30 years ago, where a child was asked, basically how to do an operation. Now they're asked to what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How are you going to apply it? So we're teaching our children to really be deep thinkers, which is what we want when we send them out into the world they're going to live in. It's not going to be a black and white world. So I think we take that into account too, that the teachers were learning the new curriculum. The kids were asked to step up to this new. So I have faith that next year is going to be even better.
I also just want to point out, because I feel very passionate about this, these scores are not an indication of teachers being ineffective. If I was still sitting as a middle school principal, I would want every 7th grade math teacher to know how valued and important they are. Because it's very hard as educators to not take these personally. They invest their own time, energy, and efforts, and often sacrifice a lot of time from their own families. So just have to give that reminder that this is not because we didn't have teachers who were working super hard.
A quick question. And I feel like I should know this, I just never thought to ask before. Do the English as a second language kids take the same STAR test?
It depends.
Okay.
There's criteria for them to be able to take the Spanish test. So we do have, as part of our emergent bilingual program for Bradford specifically, we do have a number of students who their tests are in the 3rd grade Spanish test for math or reading.
Okay.
But you can't place any student on a Spanish test just because they're a Spanish speaker.
Right. Well, the reason I was, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I was thinking because our emergent bilingual program goes through 3rd grade, but then 4th grade didn't come up much this year, or didn't come up this year. So I didn't know if that had anything to do with the kids that were in emergent bilingual that are now in 4th grade that have to take an English test.
And that's a great wondering. I would tell you, though, our TELPAS data, which is totally separate for our emergent bilingual students, has increased across the entire district. And so those are positive gains that we very much think will positively impact Domain 3, closing the gaps.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez, and thank you to all our teachers who have worked tirelessly this year with the new curriculum and everything that's been thrown at them. So appreciate that. All right, next we have consent items. We have consent items A through F this evening. Donations are minutes from our May 11th and May 18th meeting. Our delegate and alternate delegate for the TASB convention. Library book purchases, approval of the Medicaid service agreement with Houston ISD, and nomination of Amy Mizell Flint to fill Region 15 seat on the TASB Board of Directors. Does anyone have any board comments or questions on consent items A through F, or anything need to be pulled? Do I have a motion to approve consent items A through F?
I'll make a motion to approve consent items A through F.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So a motion from Dr. Mills and a second from Mr. Dindal. Any further board comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Motion passes 7-0. All right, next I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dindal to conduct our Finance and Audit Committee workshop.
Thank you, Dr. Kingman. Our finance and audit reports for this month begin on page 25 of your board book. I'm going to bring your attention to page 29, which is our May revenue and expenditures report. We're in the 9th month of our budget process, and so technically we should be about at 75% of our budget totals. Right now, revenues are running at 75.5%, and a positive thing, our expenditures right now are running at 73.4%. That may help us in our year-end tally, as we may pick up a point in our expenditures by being frugal this year as far as the final tally, and of course that will prove significant in the next couple of months. But yeah, so there's a chance that we might pick up another point as far as expenditures is concerned. So no questions about the May revenues and expenditures report. We can move to page 31, which is our combined statement of revenues and expenditures. Right now, the restricted fund balance is $4,892,209. Of that, most of that, about $4 million prox is already committed to capital projects and purchases moving forward, and then also our unassigned fund balance is holding steady at somewhere around $45 million, or at $45,035,170, which is another positive for the district as we move forward. No questions about that combined statement of revenues and expenditures. Page 33 through 50 contain our May check register. Not sure if you've reviewed all of those. If you have, great. If you have questions about any of those, please contact, again, Dr. Brandon, and he can help you with recognitions of any of those particular expenses pertaining to any of those checks. And so, and again, in our effort at transparency, all those checks are listed out as we move forward in an effort to show our constituents and our taxpayers that we want to make sure that they're in the know as much as they want to. So if there are no questions about that May check register, we can move to the investment reports. Again, our monthly report shows total invested funds of $467,954,327.59. Of that, the interest earned for the month was $1,510,819.72. Of that, the bulk of that is coming from our interest earned on our bond funds, interest in sinking fund, but the general fund earnings were $208,233.09. Right now, interest rates in those funds are varying between 3.61 and 3.81%. In addition to that, our quarterly report shows the same amount of total funds invested as of the end of May. Again, $467,954,327.59. And for the quarter, our total earnings were $4,565,445.92. No questions about that May investment report. We can move to page 60, which is our tax collection report. A monthly report for April. Again, that report runs a month behind, so we can receive data from the local district. And so our 2025 collection rates overall are 96.17% compared to our 2024 collection rates, which were 96.9%, which were slightly ahead of our 2025 collections. Still solid. There are no questions on that tax collection report. We can turn to page 61 and 62, which is our May PO report, over $20,000. Again, several of those items in there are some of the bond projects that we've got moving forward, and we're providing funds for those. No collection on any of those POs. That actually would conclude my report, Dr. Kingman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dindal. So next we'll move to the action item on those reports, which is to consider the bills, accounts, and financial statements from May of 2026. And do I have a motion?
Again, Dr. Kingman, we just reviewed these reports, and again, at our effort at transparency, all these reports can be found online on our website, saisd.org. under a tab labeled Financial Transparency. So with that, I'd move to accept the Finance and Audit Report for May.
So I have a motion to approve from May of 2026 from Mr. Dindal. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Gallegos. Any further board comments or questions? All in favor say aye. And raise your hand.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. All right. Next, we have the quarterly investment report, which we also just discussed. Do I have a motion to approve the quarterly investment?
Sure.
I make a motion to approve the quarterly investment.
A motion from Mrs. Duncan. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mrs. Mizell Flint. Any further board questions or comments regarding that? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye and raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. All right, next is RFQ 26-008, intercom system replacements for the 2025 bond, and Ms. Doyle is going to help us with that.
Good evening, Dr. Moran and the members of the school board. I shared with you at the last school board meeting that we went out for quotes for replacement of the intercom systems across all of our campuses. Currently, the intercom systems that we have are 20 plus years old. The newest one that we actually installed that is a full new install was when we opened Lamar Elementary. Now we've replaced components and parts and so forth at each of the sites, but we've not actually put a new system in over 20 years. And so because of their age, they are wearing out, as well as it's getting harder and harder to find replacement parts. Not many technology items last 20 plus years these days. So it is time to replace these systems. And so that was built into the bond project. So we, with the help of Crux Technology, we designed an RFP to request quotes for replacement at each of the sites. We received 2 bid responses, one from Soltaire and one from Elite Solutions. We have experience with both of the vendors, and we had a scoring committee review both proposals. In Soltaire's case, they were much lower in price, and their implementation timeline is much less than Elite Solutions' timeline. So the benefits of a new system, not only will we be able to manage the systems, but they will be able to have new parts, and we can find replacement parts. It'll have a small digital signage board in each classroom and in the hallways that it'll display time whenever it's just during the day. But if there is, say, a lockdown or a fire, then there will be signage that comes across that display panel and will help provide direction to our staff and students as to what's going on. And it will also integrate with other systems on our campuses, for instance, our access control system. So if we lock the campus down via the access control system, then it would also put that messaging across the board in those classrooms and hallways so that our staff know that the campus has gone in lockdown. So there's lots of capabilities that will reap from replacing the systems. Main thing is quality sound, because in some of the areas it is very hard to hear right now. They're staticky, some are very low volume, and it's because of the age of the systems. So they should have been able to hear those announcements when the principals make them on their campuses. And you'll see a breakdown. I put an updated spreadsheet and action sheet on your table at the last meeting. As I mentioned in the meeting, we had just right before the meeting gotten the what would cost for the Soltaire's, sorry, I forgot what they call it, the performance bond And so that spreadsheet has the $50,000 performance bond added on it, and so does the action sheet. But when you see the breakdown, you'll see information on a per campus basis. You will not see Glenn, McGill, Fannin, and Crockett on there because their intercom project replacements are built into their construction projects. So they will be done as well. They're just being done as part of their construction project separate from this bid. But they will get the same system. All sites would have the same product and same configuration and management system. So we ask that you approve the Soltaire technologies for the replacement of the intercom systems at the 16 sites. That includes the alternate projects for a total of $3,185,295, which that does include the $100,000 contingency and the $50,000 performance bond. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Dole, we have history with Soltaire.
Yes,
and their
they
performance.
did McGill's phase 1. And that was our pilot project, and we were very pleased with the work that they did on McGill's installs and configurations, and we are very pleased with the product.
Timely also?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Do you mind explaining the $50,000 performance bond, what that is?
You want to help with that one, Jason?
The performance bond is a bond that protects anybody who's doing work for the general contractor to make sure that they get paid. The payment bond, which is also included in there, is to make sure that any materials that are bought that go towards the job have a backing also, and all those suppliers get paid also. It's an insurance policy for everybody involved.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? And I think you said, but this all comes out of bond dollars.
Correct.
And it was part of what we advertised in the bond project
Yes.
as needing for safety and security.
Yes, it was part of what the committee prioritized and then was advertised as part of the bond project.
Any other questions or comments? All right. And then you said this will be done hopefully by November.
Our target is November, like right before Thanksgiving. And that's always contingent on supplies coming in on time. But our first target is Central High School because we need to get that one completed this summer before the building where the current system is located. It's part of what will get demolished as part of the new building project. So our first target is Central High School.
Okay.
We're going to do the biggest one first.
Any other questions from Ms. Doyle? All right, do I have a motion? And if you're making the motion, just make sure that you follow the handout of your page is not the one in the board book.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to contract with Soltaire Technologies for the replacement of intercom systems at 16 sites, including the alternate projects, for a total cost of $3,185,295. That includes a $100,000 contingency and a $50,000 performance bond.
I have a motion from Dr. Mills. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second from Mr. Dindal. Any further board comments or questions? All right. All in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. All right. Next we have RFQ. We're adding all sorts of new things in here. M26-001. And Mario Pettick's going to help us with that. That's Lakeview High School's science wing roof replacement.
Good evening, Dr. Moran, Dr. Kingman, and members of the board. Tonight I bring the Lakeview High School science wing roof replacement for consideration. The roof of the science wing is in need of replacement due to multiple leaks in classrooms and hail damage impacts. An RFQ was sent out to 3 roofing contractors capable of performing this type of work. Bids were received from 2 companies, and the lowest bid was received from Mammoth Services, LLC. They are proposing a 60 mil, fully adhered TPO roofing system with a full 20-year GAF no dollar limit warranty. Mammoth has successfully completed roofing projects for the district in the past, including Central High School, Goliad, and Holloman. Tonight, I recommend that we approve Mammoth Services LLC to replace the existing Duralast roof with a new TPO roofing system on the science wing at Lakeview High School. The total cost for this project will be $122,888. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Pedrick? This comes out of general fund.
This will be a bond project under capital renewal.
Great.
Mr. Pedrick, you want to explain the difference between Duralast and TPO?
TPO is a thermoplastic polyolefin. 60 mil is a pretty good thickness to handle our type of weather around here, Mr. Dendel. It holds up better to the hail than the Duralast.
It seems to be an improvement over the Duralast roofing. That was kind of the standard for a while now. TPO's kind of taken over. Yeah.
What I've noticed is the Duralast does not hold up well with our weather.
Any other questions? All right. Do I have a motion?
Dr. Kingman, I move we approve the administration's recommendations to approve Mammoth Services LLC to replace the existing Duralast roof with the new TPO roofing system on the science wing at Lakeview High School. Total cost at this moment for the project will be $122,888.
I have a motion from Mr. Dindal. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mrs. Duncan. Any further board comments or questions?
I just have a question. What does RFQ stand for?
Request for quotes.
And why do you send them out to only 3 roofing contractors? Are those just contractors that have worked with us in the past?
Yes, ma'am, and they're on our trades bids, and the tips purchasing, that's what Mammoth is on.
Oh, okay. And just to be clear, Mammoth is not local, right?
They are located in Houston. That's
Houston,
correct.
okay. Cool. I mean, there's just a significant difference between the quotes. That's what I was talking to Dr. Mills about, especially like with the intercom system. I just don't understand how there can be 2 different quotes that are, totally different.
There's a big difference.
A huge difference. And the only difference for me that I can see, a big difference, is one of them's local and one of them's really far away. The local one's a little bit more steep, or a lot more steep, and the other one's really cheap. And that's a really cheap price for a TPO roof.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I have a motion for Mr. Dindal and a second for Mrs. Duncan. All in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All against say the same. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Brandon, we're going to do consideration and possible action regarding the proposed change order number 1 for fire alarm installation with E3 Integral Solutions.
Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, Board of Trustees. Part of the 2025 bond plan was to replace HVAC controls, HVAC, and replace Federal Pacific panels throughout the district. Part of that being electrical panels and also fire alarm systems. E3 was selected to be the contractor for that project. We went out for the HVAC bids first so that we could start that installation as quickly as possible, and then we followed that up with the scope of the fire alarm projects. So you have in front of you this evening those campuses that their fire alarm systems are over 20 years old. We have the administration building, Bonham, Central, Lakeview, Lamar, Lincoln, and Santa Rita. So this evening, E3 would be the contractor that would oversee that work. They went out for bids with the scope and have brought back pricing of $1.83 million for the fire alarm scope additions. So you can see the original contract and then the change order from that original contract that was approved by the Board of Trustees. So this evening, administration would recommend that we approve the change order number 1 for fire alarm installation with E3 Integral Solutions in the amount of $1,830,000 as presented by administration.
What was the original budget for that project in its entirety when we proposed the bond?
I don't know. Did I remember, Carl?
35.
Yeah.
Significantly higher than this is my memory.
Right.
but
We're still way
we're-
under our capital renewal that was approved by the bond.
Okay.
I mean, we certainly have not completed all those projects, but we have come under with all the HVAC, the electrical, and now the fire panels that we've added to that.
Okay. And the across the district, I know we're looking at these 7 sites. What are the other fire alarm panels significantly younger, or do we have a lot of 19-year-old fire panel?
That's a good question. Most of those being, I would say, between a lot of those are 6 to 9 years old. So we focus first on those that were the furthest out, and then a lot of those are being replaced as we go through construction. They're in the bid, like Fannin, McGill, Crockett. So as we've done construction on those, we've replaced those fire panels as part of the construction cost.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Dr. Brandon and Mr. Danham, probably our focus is on removing all the Federal Pacific panels, and that's where these schools are specifically targeted for the removal of all the Federal Pacific panels that are out there. Mainly, that's where we're at right now.
They are working on the campuses that have Federal Pacific. They're in the process of replacing those, and this in particular is specific to the fire panels.
Were these projects, Merle, were these competitive sealed proposals, or were these CMAR projects?
So these were solicited by E3. Okay. We chose E3, as the contractor to go out and do that. They have oversight of the project, and so this was a portion that we still hadn't bid out yet, but we didn't bid it out. That was done through E3.
Through E3. Okay, thank you.
And I guess, let's see where it's at on we can go up to in that third, so in Texas Government Code 271.060, the district may approve change orders if the aggregate value of all change orders does not revise the contract amount by more than 25%. So our contract with E3, as long as we don't go over 25% of that original contract amount, the board can approve a change order. And then that keeps the district from stopping and then going out and trying to do all of them, putting advertisement out, waiting 2 weeks. And usually it's a minimum 30-day process, where E3 was already was the contractor approved by the board, and so they could go out and solicit those bids. A little more efficient.
Other questions for Dr. Brandon? All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the administration's recommendations to approve change order number 1 for fire alarm installation with E3 Integral Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $1,830,000 as presented by admin.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second. I have a motion from Mr. Gallegos and a second from Dr. Mills. Any further board questions or comments? All right. All in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Motion passes 7-0. All right, next. Dr. Moran, attendance boundaries 2728.
All right, Dr. Kingman and the board, we've talked about the elementary attendance boundaries
for a long time now. And I think we've tried to answer any and all questions and play different scenarios. We're thankful for the committee that worked through it through the spring. We're at a point now where we need to make some decisions so we can take the next steps. And the next steps will be feeder patterns and how we'll handle transfers. But the first domino to fall needs to be the attendance boundaries. So tonight, we're going to ask the board to approve the attendance boundaries as presented. And there's some verbiage specific to that to be sure that we take into account the TEA minor boundary adjustments. So the recommended action is that the board approve the administration's recommendation to adopt the proposed elementary attendance boundaries as presented with an effective date of July 1, 2027.
All right. So as Dr. Moran mentioned, we've been looking at this. We had a committee present. We all talked about this last week as well. Any questions regarding the attendance boundaries for the 27-28 school year?
Yeah, I have many questions, but I'll start with, I was not here last week at the pre-agenda meeting, but I noticed today we got an email just a couple hours before the meeting for proposed middle school feeder patterns. So in order to make that, in order to accept, the policy for the middle school, it's important that we choose the correct elementary feeder patterns. So I don't think that a couple hours is enough time for me. I mean, I didn't even get to look at it.
We talked about it last week, though, as well. It was presented to us last week, the proposed feeder patterns.
Not the ones that he told us today?
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
I asked him, and he told me that was the first time
it was presented, I think.
We're not.
But we're talking about the elementary first.
Right.
That's the next agenda item.
Right, but I'm saying, I have to be able to know what the feeder patterns for the middle schools are going to be also in order to make sure that I'm, accepting the correct elementary boundaries also, because they go hand in hand.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. We have to do one in order to do the next.
Right.
So the first one has to be done as the elementary. So this is the elementary.
So is the middle school going to be
the next agenda item?
Also
it'll
today?
be the next agenda item.
But today?
Yes.
Okay. So those are my concerns.
Okay, so let's talk about this agenda item, and then we can talk about the next agenda item, if you have concern regarding the next one. Does that make sense?
Does it make sense what I'm saying?
We're not voting on the middle school feeder patterns tonight.
It is potentially listed as an agenda item, yes, like we discussed last week.
So then it goes back to just a couple more points I wanted to make.
Are we talking about elementary at the moment, or?
Right now, elementary.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, just the way that some of the boundaries are being separated, we're sending students from certain schools to lower performing schools, such as, let's go back to, I know San Jacinto has closed. We're talking about, I'm focused on my district right now. So San Jacinto was sent to Reagan by default. Now San Jacinto, during the committee meetings, it was proposed that they would go to Fort Concho. But in the end, it looks, and then they were going to get sent to Holloman, which was even further away. Now they're getting sent to Bel Air with the proposed boundaries. So my concern is that these students keep getting hopped around to lower performing schools. Not only that, we don't have official STAR results yet. We don't have official end of the year school testing done yet, when considering Bel Air and Bradford. Now we're closing schools down and merging them to schools such as Bradford and Bel Air that are in their third year under student improvement. This year, it's my understanding that the district kind of has an idea of how those schools have performed, and I can't, of course, if we don't have that official results, but to my knowledge, Bradford didn't do very well. So if that happens and we're in year 4, but I can't speak on that because we don't have that. But nonetheless, we don't have scores yet, so we can't say if they're going to be in year 4 or not. My concern is that we're redistricting, rebounding these students to schools that they're not performing any better. And it's just, to me, it's not okay to send students from a higher performing school to a lower performing school. And I feel like that's a law also, that we're not supposed to be doing that as a district. So those are just some of my concerns that I have.
Other questions or comments?
I'm trying to read this map. So all of the San Jacinto is going to Bel Air, or part of it?
Part.
It's just part of it?
Part of it.
All of it, right? The other half is going to go to?
There's a smaller,
There's a little small area?
a smaller percentage that is not going to go to Bel Air, but a bigger portion is going to go to Bel Air from Reagan. And if I'm not mistaken, most of the Reagan kids are going to Bradford, is that correct? I don't have the map in front of me, I'm sorry.
Let's pass this down to Ms. Cardenas. So you'll notice the Reagan was divided into 3 sections, and the eastern section would attend Bradford. The northwest section would go to Goliad, and the southwest section would go to Fort Concho.
What, we're talking about Reagan students, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a concern with sending students year after year to lower performing schools.
And I mean, I think the goal for this, Ms. Cardenas, is to make an alignment of a map that makes sense, improve all of our schools, but also that makes sense so that we don't have to move people anytime soon, ever again. I mean, like, the problem we've had is we have been moving students over time, and the idea is to create schools that are as close as can be geographically, make sense, keep their high school feeder patterns as close as possible, and then allow for there not to be future changes from those new patterns. But yes, absolutely, we're disrupting the district completely by doing boundary lines, just like we're sending Bowie kids to Crockett and McGill, I think. And we're sending, we're doing it all over this. I mean, we're changing where Santa Rita students go. We're changing where Glenmore students go. I mean, we're changing a lot of students, but the goal is to have a district map and that's why we had the committee meet, and then we looked at it. We've had this map, I think, for a month and 2 weeks, maybe, month and 2 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, where the idea is that, yes, it's going to disrupt, but it's going to be a one-time disruption, which allows for us to be able to put certified teachers. I mean, Dr. Gomez was just talking about the fact that we are short teachers. The idea is, the idea of you live in one line here or one line there, and all of a sudden you are going to a better school or not better school. The idea is that all of our schools are performing, and that's why we have this aligned curriculum. That's why we want to put certified teachers. I mean, it's the teachers that make the difference with all these kids, the teachers and their parents and families. I mean, like, that's where we need, and so if we can do this once, that allows for us to not have to keep moving people around. So, I mean, I agree with you, it's disrupting the entire district.
And I know there's really no way to make everyone happy, especially with the schools that we've already closed. It's not possible to make a little bit more sense than what we have here. But like I said, my concern is we are moving certain students to lower performing schools that are in year 3 of, the student performance. They're in the red zone. And we don't know if they're going to be in year 4 yet until August. And I know the goal is to move them once and be done with it. But if they're continuing to be in the red zone, it's not going to just be once. They're going to have to be moved again.
And if they continue to be in the red zone, the whole district will be taken over by board of managers. I mean, quite honestly, I mean that. I don't mean that callously. I don't mean that flippantly. It's just, if we don't fix those campuses, it really doesn't matter anything that we do.
Right.
Because this is a goal to try to come up with solutions that allow for us to avoid that situation. But you're absolutely right. If we don't, as a board, community, district, all of the above, fix campuses that are, like your term, in the red, then the state will come in and draw the lines wherever they want to. And it may be a square grid of around San Angelo that has nothing to do with any of these lines. Whereas what we've tried to do is create a committee of local citizens to try and come up with lines that make sense but still accomplish the goal of having 12 elementary schools that can, so we can then staff them and give the support that every campus needs over the next 20 years, and specifically the next 2 years.
I agree with you. That's the goal, to make these campuses better, and I don't think it's better by putting two underperforming campuses, combining them. How are we going to improve those schools that way? It's very difficult to do that.
I think there's such a big, wide picture of, what causes a school to be underperforming. And there's a lot of different. And I am hoping, and I know that our team, Farah, and our ICs have really spent, we've had people coming in helping our underperforming schools. I think they've done a big dive into why. You can't fix something if you don't know the why. Why were they underperforming to begin with? If it's because, our kindergartners are coming behind, which I'm not saying that's what it is, but if that is the why, then we dig in and we fix the why. So I'm hoping that with all the extra that I know that Miss Rayleigh Self spent a lot of time with her team going into those schools and building, and I even met with Miss Contreras, and we have a ways to go, but I think that she did see some turnaround as far as, I had someone say that went there, a parent, she would put her kid there any day because of the intentionality and the expectations, and all of that is what's going to make a school grow. The teachers, the number one, but the expectation of when a child walks in the door, what is expected of you? What is expected of a parent? What is expected of everybody? And I always say it's a triangle. It's the teacher, the student, and the parent. That triangle is what's going to cause the school to soar. And we focus on those, but that doesn't mean in 2 years the school over here could be year one improvement, because things change in education all the time, and it's like a balancing act. When you go over here and help this, you've got to make sure this isn't lacking. So I think we have to walk in faith and hope and pray that our teachers are out there working hard and doing, and we support them. And we have 0 schools that are in that stage. So if we combine 2, we support them more, we're on the lookout more, we're seeing what we can do. We put, Dr. Moran said that one time, we put some of our best teachers in those holes, and we pair them up with a veteran, a new teacher, so they have accountability, they have wisdom. I always say, a good veteran teacher brings the wisdom, a new teacher brings new ideas that maybe they haven't, and together they can be powerful. So I think that they're doing all of that. And like I said, it's such a huge picture and so many different elements. So my hope is that we're doing all that, and that this time next year we're not sitting here talking about who's in improvement. We're talking about this school is great, this school is great. It doesn't matter what school you go to in town, you're going to get the best high quality education and leave our district as an exceptional educated child. So that is what I cling to.
And one thing I would just say, Ms. Cardenas, one thing that over the last couple of years with Dr. Gomez and Dr. Moran, like they've, at times, I do feel like our district has sat there and sent resources to areas in need, but without a broader plan of how to prevent the next campus from being in that need. And we haven't had the resources to put all of the support everywhere. And so with less elementary schools, the idea is we can have more resources, but we also have a plan now across all of our elementary schools where we're already preventing the next school from ever getting to year 3 because we have this aligned plan. And like, it's not gonna be perfect, but I do think it's a much more calculated and much more efficient to sit there and have a plan in place always, not just be responsive. And I think what we are trying to do as a district is to be proactive instead of reactive. And I'm not saying we've always been reactive, but at times I think we've been reactive. And even with getting STAR reports, what is today, June 15th? Like, that's early, and that's Dr. Gomez is working on it, Dr. Moran is working on what are our next steps. And so having that in place, while yes, this disrupts everyone in town by changing attendance boundaries. I mean, because to your point, like, then we got to talk about feeder patterns. Then we got to talk about transfer patterns. I mean, it's all related, one step after another, and you're absolutely correct on that. But we got to do one step at a time so we can get there. And so, for me, I would make a motion that we approve the elementary attendance boundaries as presented with an effective date of July 1st, 2027. Is there a second?
Are we getting our results tomorrow? Or when do the official results come for start testing? August. You don't think it's too much to ask to wait till we get our official results?
There's a motion. Let's see if there's a second, then there'll be an opportunity for more board conversation.
You made the motion before I finished talking.
Okay, I apologize, but there'll be an opportunity for more conversation, as always, after this. I mean, we just have to follow the rules of how it works.
I get it. I understand.
What is the second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
So I have a second from Mrs. Mizell Flint. Now, is there any further board comments or questions? Ms. Cardenas?
Yeah, you don't think it's, you think it's asking too much to wait till we get our official scores from the schools in order to look after these kids that, deserve to be more balanced, like Ms. Duncan said?
Do you have another plan that looks better than the map that has been proposed as far, like, do you have another option?
Well, yeah, that will take a long time. I mean,
well, that's what we had the committee for, right?
Well, there was that consensus in that committee that I saw. Even if somebody wants to say that, it's hard. We've closed down several schools. There's no way to make, something where everybody's going to agree. I know that.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
of course, there's different ways to mix up the community, just like Fort Concho. Look at Fort Concho. And look at Santa Rita. I mean, I walked in the other day and there's a second grader doing Algebra 2. I was blown away. There's a way to integrate a little bit better. Bradford what is their percentage, do you know, of minority students? I believe it's over 90%. I mean, there's different ways and ideas, of course, that I have, but I don't think right now is the time to do that. I feel like it's not asking too much just to wait till we get official results. It's a month and a half away, and then maybe we can better plan. But I also think, something of this magnitude, this is significant, that if we're not all in agreement, why should something pass? I know a lot of our decisions are majority rules, but this is a big deal. And if we're not all in agreement, why should it pass? Shouldn't we all be on the same page? It's a team of 7. These are just my thoughts and concerns.
Other board comments or questions?
I mean, I would like to comment that I hear everything Ms. Cardenas says, and I think it's important to make timely decisions for families to make decisions. And if in whatever way that, so delaying something, I'm not sure is the right move. Because a lot of this is based on geographic location. That's how elementary schools are that's how their boundaries are drawn up typically. I mean, you want, and you've alluded to this in previous arguments, you want your child to go to a nearby school. And I commend the committee, because I know I went to several of the meetings, and it's very challenging to redraw boundaries, because you have to, it's like you move one thing and another thing, 4 things get moved, and things are constantly evolving. So it was very hard for them to come to this, and there were a lot of discussions, and I think they did a really good job. There's no, like they mentioned multiple times, there's no perfect map, there's no perfect boundaries, but the goal of this was to make a map that made geographic sense and didn't split up neighborhoods as much as possible, affected as few kids as possible, tried to maintain feeder patterns as much as possible. So we're trying to disrupt as few kids as possible. And while some kids may be going to a previously lower performing school, some kids may be going to a higher performing school. So there is some balance there, and it's no perfect system. We want all our schools better. It's not like we're trying to send certain kids to certain schools because we want this school to do better. This is all very much a geographic thing from everything that I saw, and that's how elementary schools are drawn up. And so I thought they did a good job. It makes a lot of sense when you look at it. You could make a strong argument that makes much more sense in our current boundary lines. The way that over the years they sort of got kind of weird shapes in different areas of town, but this makes a lot of sense, and I commend them. I know they spent a lot of time on it, and I think ultimately it's a great map. And then if the board approves, then we can move on to the next step in this process that, as you've alluded to, there's a lot to everything that we're doing. So, but potentially delaying it for STAR scores, I'm not sure how the STAR scores is going to affect something that's mainly a geographic, placement. So that's why, I agree that we wouldn't want to push it off. But I do commend the committee. I know they put a lot of time and work into it. I went to the meetings. It's a lot, and they did a great job, and I appreciate all the time that they spent.
Other comments? Questions? All right, so there's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye, and please raise your hand. Aye. All against say the same. Motion passes 6-1. All right, next we will consider San Angelo ISD's secondary feeder patterns, and Dr. Moran, you have a presentation on this?
Dr. Kingman and the board, we've got some information for you. If you remember last week, Mr. Kalmbach came to the podium and talked to us about secondary feeder patterns, because we know that this is important for a lot of reasons. But one, we know the timeliness of our decisions are important to our parents. Some parents are waiting right now to see if this attendance boundary map will be approved, which it just has been. And then the next step is, where will that push my kid? If he's a GT kid, what elementary serves that middle school? And so in doing so, I've asked Mr. Kalmbach to come back, and he's going to present a few things. And while he's making his way, I want to remind the board that we did a few things in the conversation really over the months. We wanted to make sure that we preserved the GT magnet feeders. So Holloman feeds Lincoln, Santa Rita feeds Lone Star, and Fort Concho feeds Glen. So that was kind of we were pretty comfortable just keeping that as is. And then we sought to keep the feeders contiguous. So in other words, if you're a pod of 4 elementaries, that your boundaries touched one another. And so that was another thing. And we knew that going to 12 elementaries with 3 middles, we'd like to have 4 elementaries feeding 1 middle school. And so then finally, we just wanted to make sure that we moved the fewest number of campuses if possible. And so last week, if you'll recall, we looked at the map and we talked about the proximity of Glenn to Lone Star and how close they are. We also talked about Lincoln being on the far northern side of the district with the 4 elementaries that feed Lincoln kind of in place. So in our minds, we feel like that's kind of a set deal. Bradford, Fannin, Holloman, and Goliad currently feed Lincoln. There's no reason to change that. It makes sense geographically. They're contiguous. Holloman feeds Lincoln as a GT magnet. And then we got down to Lone Star, and with the proposed feeder pattern, we proposed that Crockett would feed Lone Star. That would be that one attendance boundary going to Lone Star, and that would mean that Santa Rita would continue to feed Lone Star as the GT magnet. The problem with the map, I think that everybody can see, is that Crockett is right next door to Glenn. And so with Glenn's location, it creates an optics issue of why would you send Crockett to Lone Star when it's right next to Glenn? That's really the only thing that we as a staff kind of got hung up on as we talked about it. But at the end of the day, we settled on, if Crockett went to Lone Star, then that would give us 4 elementaries feeding Glenn. That would be Lamar, Glenmore, Bel Air, and Fort Concho. Those 4 already feed Glenn. And then Lone Star would be fed by Bonham, McGill, Santa Rita, and then the newly added Crockett. So that was our recommendation last week to the board as we discussed it. And then there was a question about, well, what if? And so we've got a couple scenarios. Mr. Kalmbach's going to walk you through those. And we've also provided data with enrollment numbers that project out, so you can see how we're trying to balance the middle schools. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Kalmbach.
So, and just for clarification too, on the philosophy, the 3 years that are in yellow on all 3 of these charts are the first years where middle school starts to be affected. So just so that as we're looking at these, everybody knows that the idea is that the middle schools would continue on until they started being affected by the new feeder campuses and their residing populations. So that takes time as a group of 5th graders moves into 6th grade and then 7th grade. And so that's what the yellow is for. So this is the one that we saw last week. And as you can tell, the first year where the middle schools will all represent the number of students that reside in that zone will be 2030 and 2031. That's after 3 years of new feeder students that reside in that area. So then the 3 middle schools are balanced out. So it takes that long for the feeder numbers to affect it. So this is the first proposal. And as requested, we also had a question about adding the map to that. So that's the map that represents the, I guess, Plan A, or the proposed plan with Crockett moving over. And another question that was brought up was transportation. So we put the circles on there that represents a 2-mile radius around the campuses. That's where you can tell, like, they almost overlap because they're so close. But from the best that we can tell in any of these proposals, transportation is really not much different, just because the circles are right on top of each other. So it's not like we're gaining a bunch either way when it comes to transportation. But we represented on the maps the 2 middle schools there. And then the new proposed, or the now voted on elementary boundaries color-coded by the middle schools that they would feed to. So the second proposal or question was about if Bel Air was flipped from Glenn, was the school that was flipped from Glenn into Lone Star. And so those are the numbers as they play out after the 3 years. So in 30 and 31, the numbers are relatively close. Again, we need to make sure that everybody understands that these are projections, and they are projections based on the students we have now and the enrollment we have now, it does not take into account the projected decline in enrollment. So these are most likely the highest that the numbers would be, just because of the predicted decline in enrollment that will happen. And then the map that goes with that chart, color-coded. And that's the one with where Crockett would stay in Glen and Bel Air would be in Lone Star. That's that proposal. So I labeled those B so we can kind of keep straight. After you look at these maps for a long time, they can start to run together, and the charts as well. So, and then the third proposal was it had 3 schools switching, where it had Bel Air and Fort Concho switching from Glen to Lone Star, and Santa Rita flipping from Lone Star over to Glen. And you can see the numbers are relatively the same. So if you remember last week, I mentioned how once you get the schools to relative same size, if you flip them around, it doesn't change those numbers over time very much. It's much different than having really small schools and then having some really big schools. So with this number of schools and the enrollment that they will have based on reside, which is also a part of the process of redrawing, was getting those schools to a certain size, you can really move them around in the feeder like that without really affecting the numbers, as you can see as it plays out. So the map that goes with that one and then the last slide is the high school feeder pattern, which when you go to high school, you have to wait 4 more years after that until the numbers truly represent who resides in there based on the feeder. So the high schools wouldn't be their real number until 2034, after they have fed through the system up to that point. And those didn't change from last week because none of the proposals had a switch of the Lincoln Lakeview feeder pattern. So the high school numbers are the same as last week. And that's sort of the update. I hope we covered the questions that you had from last week.
Can you show us the maps again? Sorry.
Yes.
And to Mrs. Cardenas' point, these maps did come today, the actual finalized maps. We did talk about A and B. We had a picture last week, but we had A and B last week, but we didn't get these maps until today, all of us.
In the afternoon, right?
Yes, ma'am. So option A, I just want to make sure I've got this right. Option A affects elementaries, really only elementary students at Crockett, who are also Bowie elementary students, obviously being affected as well, that are, and option B affects.
It kind of does, because when we say Crockett, we are talking about the new Crockett. So because of the redraw of the boundaries, a good number of students that are in the Crockett zone were in the Crockett zone yesterday. Next year, some of them will be going to Glenmore. Like the redraw, when we say that it's affecting Crockett, it's affecting the new Crockett. And the new Crockett is a lot of Bowie, but not all of the former Bowie students, because the former Bowie students also, some of them will actually be going to McGill under the new redraw. So it can be misleading to say that a school, like a whole school, is being affected, because under the new redraw, it may not be affecting some students that currently go to that school. So
it's like a little, like a section that's going to be
correct
affected, not the whole
right
thing.
Yeah, there will be some students that were currently at Crockett. After this redraw, will be going to Glenmore. Well, they would, under this plan, continue to go to feed to Glen. So I just want to make sure that it doesn't necessarily apply to everyone who's currently enrolled at that school. It would be, again, after the redraw, because the redraw will take effect in 27, 28, but and something that we mentioned last week that we can mention again this week is that our proposal is that in 27 and 28, when these boundaries go into effect, that we would consider the fifth graders of those campuses being able to finish their last year at their current school. So that will push back one more year the effect of the feeder patterns on those middle school. But we felt like for a student who's been going to a school from kindergarten all the way through fourth grade, our proposal would be that they get to continue for that fifth grade year. So then after that process, then it would be the following year before anyone would feed to the new process. But yes, kind of historically, Crockett students had gone, and Bowie students had gone to Glenn. In this, a good number of them would be feeding into Lone Star on this one.
I just want to make sure that it's clear what was just said. Because I want to make sure I understand it. The students who graduate from fifth grade next year,
they're going to their regular feeder as it is now. That would be the proposal.
So a kid who graduated from an elementary, it was a transfer student at an elementary, I'm not talking about elementary schools, because we haven't had the transfer policy discussion, obviously, as a board. So I'm talking about, but from a feeder pattern perspective, if you live in this blue area in 27, 28, you would go to Lone Star, regardless of what elementary school you went to. That is a true statement, correct?
That is a true statement. That's
correct.
Yep,
okay.
You got that.
That's what when we talked about it last week, that's what I understood.
Yep,
I just want to make sure that.
And they would all go.
Okay. So,
the whole school would go, yeah.
Well,
you're right.
yeah, but that school wouldn't really change until the following year. But as far as, but you would, when these elementary zones become effective, that same year, middle school zones become effective. So at the end of fifth grade, this next school year would go to wherever they are shaded in whatever feeder pattern. Like obviously we haven't voted on a feeder pattern, but in whatever feeder pattern they are shaded to, they will go to that feeder pattern.
That's our.
And if I could make a comment for the board's ease, because we're going to have a lot of discussion about transfers and how we negotiate this. In-house, we've talked about the kids that are currently in middle school. We want them to complete in the middle school that they are currently attending, so that we're not pulling the plug on these kids. Start with the elementary campuses, and as they matriculate up through the system, that they attend the zone of the middle school they reside in. So we're going to have deeper conversations specifically about, Mr. Kalmbach mentioned incoming fifth graders. So this would be a kid who actually completed third grade this year, will complete fourth grade next year, and will be a rising fifth grader when we start the new attendance boundaries. That at the very least, we feel it's fair to let them complete at the elementary that they've attended. And then we'll, from that point, talk to you all and get input, which we've already been working scenarios and questions. Our administrative team spent a better part of a morning last Thursday working scenarios and working up solutions so that we can come to you not only with scenarios, but with solutions. So there's a lot more conversation to have with the whole transfer and how we move from point A to point B on all this. But specifically, the secondary feeder pattern decision will be important as to how we proceed.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't, and I probably got us into the weeds on that, so I apologize.
And it is complicated because even a transfer, we don't, until tonight, we didn't know where they would reside. So that's part of the process moving forward. So yeah,
and that's to your point, Ms. Cardenas, like the reason we have to make decisions over the next couple months is we can't we can't make this decision until we had the decision previous, the boundaries, and then we can't make a transfer policy decision, would be my understanding, until we know what our capacities are at each elementary school to figure out what we can do. So, and then, okay. And so the goal, and I just want to make sure I reiterate, or not reiterate, what's the word when you repeat? Repeat what I heard from, repeat is the word I'm going to use. There's a fancier word. As far as when you're looking at maps, so obviously map B is not contiguous. That's the concern with it. So that if we ever had to close more elementary schools or whatever happened, like it would be more disruptive because they're not contiguous. Is that a fair statement? The problem
that was
from
our
an
concern.
admin concern.
Our concern. And now this for the Crockett zone next to Glenn, that looks pretty good. Go back to A, if you will, Mr. Kalmbach. On this map, you almost get kind of a northern with the yellow, a western with the blue, and an eastern with the green. Instead of stacked on top of one another, on the southern end of the district, you get a kind of an east-west split. And that's the reason we stayed away from B, is because it isolates Bel Air, even though it makes a little more sense for Crockett. And then C, if you'll flip to C, the problem we have here is that that's a Santa Rita, which is a GT feeder for Lone Star, would be moved to Glenn, and Fort Concho, that is a GT magnet for Glenn, would be moved to Lone Star, and then there's one other. Bel Air then. Bel Air would be a Lone Star. So that's 3 elementary campuses that are being moved. We just didn't feel great about that. I mean, honestly, and I know it looks good, makes sense, and I think the numbers work on all 3 of these options, but we just didn't feel good about that. For that reason, it'd be a major shift in feeder patterns for 3 campuses. So that's why we proposed A to the board last week. And last week, the map for A was shared with the board. We looked at that last week. And then during that conversation, there was a question about Bel Air, and that's why we developed B and C and shared it out. So anyway, that's the reason it didn't come till today.
One other thing about when we were looking at the considerations for our proposal with Crockett, what can be a little misleading about the Crockett zone is just simply because the school itself is right next to Glenn, but it's on the very eastern edge of the Crockett zone. So if you're thinking about where the students in the Crockett zone live, if you look at where they actually live, a lot of them live over farther that are pretty close to Lone Star. So when you first think Crockett, you think, wow, it's sitting right there by Glenn, but that's not where all of the kids live that go to Crockett. So that was just another consideration. With Bel Air, they're equally as far away from Lone Star as they are Glenn. So just another thought in terms of our proposal.
Other board comments or questions?
I don't know how you guys can digest all this information quickly. I mean, I'm telling you, I got B and C at 2 p.m. today, and I would just like a little bit more time to sit down and look at the maps instead of making a decision right now that I really don't feel confident at all in voting one way or another.
Other questions or comments?
Could you weigh in on I know y'all keep talking about the contiguous boundaries. What are because obviously, like I mentioned last time, I like the idea that kids that could walk to the school can walk to the school if possible, and you're going to get that more with B versus A. But what are some of the advantages of, what are the nice things other than having a very attractive looking map? What are the positives of having a contiguous boundary school zone?
I've got you right here. Oh, can you switch me back to controller? You want to look at map A?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if Dr. Moran wants to speak to that. It was a big part of the conversation of the. There was quite a few, I guess, conversations with the team drawing the elementary boundaries, which the leadership was trying to kind of direct that because it was supposed to be about the elementary, and so it didn't get all the way into that. But I'll just give you my perspective as someone who has dealt with the transfers in our district, the transfer requests in our district. When you have it where it's not where it's separated like that, you will get more requests. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong or good or bad, but you'll have other ones requesting. You'll have a lot more transfer requests from people that it's just it's kind of a visual thing, or they see that they're crossing through other parts of the zone, or they'll be like, well, Fort Concho, they go to Glen, but we have to drive through Fort Concho to get over there. I don't know that that's a significant thing, but it's one thing that we know. But I think the committee was very concerned about keeping it together. But I don't know if anybody wants to add to that as far as the major benefits, or other than people looking at the map and going, what's going on there?
Yeah, and outside of it looking unusual, like I mentioned last week, it just, like if the elementary school has to drive to, because no one in Bel Air is going to be walking to Glen or Lone Star.
Correct. And incidentally, that was one thing, that's the reason why we drew the lines for the buses, because that, if it was different, the maps could look different. But both Fort Concho really and Bel Air, no matter whichever middle school, they're outside the 2 mile. They're going to be bused. The whole zone is going to be bused no matter where they go to middle school. So that was an interesting thing, I think, that we saw when we put those on there that, they're not. And then there's a couple, like really the entire Crockett zone is inside. Crockett and Santa Rita are both inside, no matter which that they go to. So no one from those schools will be bused. So it's really kind of interesting, but the circles are almost on top of each other. So
yeah, I would say that more of the district is in the Glen district versus the Lone Star district of Crockett. But and I don't know how much of the Crockett students would be able to physically walk to Lone Star versus Glen. I mean, I think you're going to get a much higher. Not that that's the only reason we have feeder patterns, but I just, like I said, when I mentioned it last week, it seems like, practically speaking, students that could easily get to Glen on their own potentially, having them go to another school to bring in another elementary school across town, it ends up looking kind of, because most of Glen, under map A, most of Glen is like, I mean, there really isn't much in the Glen, in the 2 miles surrounding Glen. Most of it's outside its boundaries. And
it doesn't really matter which way you do it, that happens. Just because Glen is so spread out. One thing just to keep in mind on Crockett is that is a very new Crockett. Like Crockett in the new elementary boundary, that's mostly Bowie. Like if you,
but they've been going to Glen also.
They've been going to Glen. They do not walk to Glen. The Bowie students do not walk to Glen. I'm just saying that I was principal there for so long, like knowing. But the new Crockett it's about half of the old Crockett, and then pretty much it's about 2/3 of the old Bowie. So it's a very new Crockett.
But all of those streets right next to Jackson, just on the other side, or Johnson, right? Johnson.
Right.
All those
Johnson,
those are all Crockett, and those would be the ones going towards Lone Star.
They would go to Lone Star. Those are the ones that live close enough to Crockett to walk. That would be going to Lone Star. They're across Johnson, like behind Frontier. It's all the college streets.
Yeah, A&M, A&M Oxford.
Yeah. all of that would remain in Crockett, all the way over. Yeah, this isn't a very detailed map, but in middle school, I mean, I'm just talking from experience of being in middle school for all those years at Glenn. I mean, there's a handful of students that ride their bike. We have a couple bike racks, and there'd be 3 or 4 bikes and a handful that walk. But most get dropped off. The car drop-off lines are in the back and the front. Most get dropped off. But I mean, yeah, that's a consideration for sure.
Currently, where does Bel Air feed to currently? Does it feed to Glenn as well? So, okay.
Well, and just like Glenn and Lone Star are so close, we have 2 of our GT schools right there together too. So that also, I think, is what is causing a little bit of you don't send 2 GT magnets to one middle school.
Correct.
One goes to
Well, it wouldn't be our recommendation.
Right, yeah, mine neither. So
I mean, that was the other consideration, I think, because Fort Concho would be within, like, it does touch the others, so that was a consideration rather than Bel Air, but then you would have 2 GT feeders going to the same campus.
If I can make a comment, just reminding the board that when we looked at this, we were reminded if Glenn had a more southern location, it would have been a nice thing, right? But that didn't happen. And so, because Lincoln really is perfectly suited to serve those 4 elementary schools there in yellow, but man, Lone Star and Glenn's proximity to one another really make it difficult. I mean, that's just, it's just the reality.
Well, it's similar to the fact that we have New Fannin students who live 3 blocks from Lone Star. I mean, it's just the reality of you have to draw a line somewhere, and Lone Star is in the middle of town, and Glenn is in the middle of town. So, Mr. Kalmbach, what do either of those maps do with economic disadvantaged student percentile or at either campus? Like, what does that do to that in levels?
Yeah. So, and I know there was a question about that. And so what's tricky about the socioeconomic status is that we traditionally, we know what they've been at our campuses, but what they will be is who resides in those zones. So if we take a look, I'll just tell you that A and B, there's not a ton of difference between A and B. The one that could shift that would be C, and the main reason is because the current enrollment at Fort Concho has a low socioeconomic status than it will have when it resides. So this one right here could end up with Glenn having a much, it's confusing because, yeah, if we use the term if we use the term ED, like economically disadvantaged, that's better.
I'm a urologist. Use economic disadvantage, please.
Yeah, I know. I know. And we have a term, our term in our world, ED, is emotionally disabled. So there's all the different things. But this C would end up with Lone Star having a higher rate of economically disadvantaged students over time. That's the easiest way to say that.
How hard would it be to get data of what the economic disadvantage rate would look like in 3031? I mean, like, because that's when it matters.
Right.
I mean, like,
so the thing is we would have to rely on, we'd have to rely on the demographer's report, because currently soon we will have our own geocoding thing, but currently they have the geocoding applications so that they can see the demographics in a proposed plan. We can pull all the reports we want on our current enrollment, but the demographer can take the demographics of the kids where they reside. So I guess we could get the current economically disadvantaged. It'd be difficult. And the main reason is because they pull that demographic information and then they connect it to the address. So we would have to know which kids. We're projecting these numbers just based on the numbers, and we would have to know which kids would be changing to be able to predict
But
that.
if we said, I mean, to me, as a board, I mean, obviously option C seems not even feasible. I mean, like, we're moving 3 elementary schools. That seems silly to me. But in the ones that are moving A and B, I think it would be, when we're only moving 1 elementary school, I think it would be prudent to see if the demographer could come up with just those 2 zones, unless someone has, I mean, like, to what you point out, like, we can't really put there's not a D where you put Fort Concho and Santa Rita together to make the map look pretty, because then you're just changing our GT magnet pattern completely.
Just from what I know, but that would be much easier to get the demographer on Crockett and Bel Air. But just from what we know about the resides general, those are very similar zones in their economically disadvantaged proportions. So, but it would definitely be easier to get the actual.
Yeah.
Again, we would be projecting them out several years, so it still wouldn't be exact, but it would be much easier than trying to get the other.
That would obviously be helpful, but to make a decision about the whole school, you kind of need to do that for all of the schools that feed in, like all 4 of all of the districts of those 2 middle schools, because obviously, like, Crockett's economically disadvantaged may change, but so will Lamar, and so will some of these other districts. That's going to affect the totality of the school. Am I correct?
Well, if you're just considering between these 2 options, you really just need to know. You would be assuming that the rest of them would remain the same.
But they won't be.
But they're changing their lines too. Is I think what Dr. Mills' point is we have to do it based on all the new lines. Is I think what he is the point he's making is
like just comparing those 2 districts doesn't really help us, because if, let's say, the other 3 are 50% and then the other 3 on the other school are 30% after they've been redrawn, it doesn't really help us if we compare just Bel Air. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I see what you're saying. I guess you would then be considering, though, changing other schools if those turned out to be something that you didn't.
No, I'm just saying, like, it help. The more data we have with that would help. It allows us to compare, because if we're trying to equalize, we're trying to make it sense practically, but we also want to take the economic disadvantage into account. We would just. I think it'd be helpful to have all of it. I know it may not be possible.
I'm happy to try to work that out. I mean, we can dig into it and see what we can find. It may take us a little while, but we've got, July 13th is our next meeting. If you want us to bring that back to the board, we can do that.
Let me do this just to make sure we follow the rules, Dr. Moran. So I guess the first question is there a motion for either plan without the data that we've just requested, or is there a motion without the data that we've just requested to approve either option A, B, or C? With that data, if that data wouldn't change, I guess someone's. Well, he wouldn't go get that data. If that data wouldn't change anything, for the vote, but And then the next option would be to make a motion to table it until the July 13th meeting, because it's been listed as an action item. If people feel like if there is data out there to be received, they would change their vote. The key on that, though, is making sure that, like we talked about last week with email and questions to Dr. Moran, like we need to make sure that we get all the data points that we need. I mean, we did mention, we need to make sure we get the data points that we need, because if there's not fresh data that would change the vote, then
The only data we get is just the EDA.
would be the economic disadvantage. Yeah, that's the only thing that someone's mentioned so far.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion that we approve administration's recommendation to approve the secondary feeder patterns as presented to become effective July 1st, 2027.
So I have a motion from Mr. Gallegos. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
This is for A?
So a motion from Mr. Gallegos and a second from Mr. Dindal. So there's been a motion and a second. So is there any further board comments or questions?
I would just like to say, I understand all the things that we've talked about, and I think I'm okay going along with A, but I really struggle with Crockett going to Lone Star. And I know we've just had this whole conversation, but just the optics, I think will cause some questions in the near future and in the future. But having understood that, I think I would still go ahead and vote for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the problem is those two middle schools are 1.2 miles apart, and I can't. The solution is not that it's coming up with a better solution than option A. To Mr. Kallenbach's point, is like it's not a perfect option, but is there a better solution? But that being said,
I still think I think we have adequate time to look into additional data to make a good, because this affects 500 students. This is going to affect more students than the elementary school boundaries. This is a big decision. So
Yeah.
I don't take it lightly.
Right.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
And we worked on the other one for months. This one we've had
2 weeks.
a week,
Yeah.
2 weeks. So I respect the nomination, but I think it needs more time.
So you could also make a motion to table. Yeah, but I think I reviewed this earlier today because I'm fairly certain that before the vote is called on Robert's rules, everyone double check me real quick, we can make a motion to table to this and then get a second for that. So and then that has to be voted on. If that's voted down to table it, then we have to vote on your motion. I promise you I looked it up.
There's a little more information that you may need before you do that in terms of practically moving forward. So we're waiting to tell all of the newly identified GT students. So we're waiting to tell them where they're going to go to school based on this. So just so that you have that information, not trying to influence anything, but it's important to know that our process of registration starts in May, and we do all of that. And because we knew that this all was going to be happening, the newly identified GT students who are not currently at a magnet, they are going to have a choice to go to the magnet, but it'll be the magnet that's in their feeder, so that we're not then in the next year telling them they have to go to another school the following
year. Is it A
year.
or B the same for those?
Not for Crockett.
Well, but in terms of voting,
For Bel Air and Crockett.
Bel Air, it would require Bel Air and it would just only be the Bel Air and Crockett students that we wouldn't
But
be
they're
able
not GT schools.
Just saying the students.
No, these are students that are currently residing in all the schools that just got identified GT.
At their campus.
They're all still at their campus. They weren't identified GT before. They have been identified this spring as GT. So they will get, and we've had a meeting with them to inform them of what's happening. But what we didn't want to happen was for them to be identified. We give them the choice to go to the magnet. They decide to go to the magnet, and then the following year find out that they're in the wrong magnet, and then we would have to move them again, or also them knowing like where they reside. So we have put all of them on hold.
Well, but you only need to really put those 2 campuses on hold.
People who reside in the Bel Air and Crockett would have to continue to be on hold if we're only considering option A or B. But you understand. But there's no vote, so you can't do that.
We can't tell them really until there's a vote. Yeah.
Anyway, let's go for it. Was there a motion?
I would like to make a motion to table until we have further data, including economically disadvantaged data.
So there's a motion from Dr. Mills. I would second that motion until we can, and with the plan. We'll have to vote on that because now there's 4 people that vote against that motion. We move forward with Mr. Gallegos's and Mr. Dindal's motion. Does that make sense? So, but with the idea, for me, I don't want an unforeseen consequence of thinking we back of the napkin got economic disadvantage correct and then not being correct on that. It's not as much about the optics for me about the Crockett, and it's just because I don't see a better solution from that. For me, the only way that would sway me one way or the other is if we are making an unforeseen consequence of making one middle school disproportionate to the other as far as where we're headed.
If we're voting on option A, though, haven't the economic disadvantaged families already been identified in that one?
No.
Didn't we talk about that at the committees?
Well, by their elementary schools, yes. So, but back of them, I don't think we have it to the next step. Does that make sense? Like it's back of the napkin math. It is. I think I agree. My back of the napkin math is that it's pretty equivalent, just like Mr. Kallenbach said. But I haven't seen that actual data, just like the rest of us haven't seen it. So any further board comments or questions on the vote to table?
Yeah, I have I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
I was just going to kind of agree with Kyle that I've had months and months to look at the elementary, but last week was the first week that Kyle brought up the Bel Air, if I'm right. So from my brain, I need a little bit more time than a week, and with the map, just to process before I make a vote.
Okay, so let's make a vote on tabling, and then we'll, oh, sorry, Ms. Cardenas.
No. Well, now, you said you had months and months to review the elementary? I thought we got him in May. No?
I guess they've been working on those.
Just working, okay.
Yeah.
And we just were presenting it last month.
Yes, ma'am.
But just to clarify, and with all due respect, you all last week asked for a couple of different options, right, at last week's meeting?
Yes.
Right, the ones that were presented today? Then why were we emailed them at 2 p.m. before the meeting with expectation of voting on them?
I'll answer that question. And it's an easy answer. So last week, we worked through, and this is not an excuse, but we had our Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday district-wide professional learning from sunup to sundown. These guys were presenting all day and tied up, and Mr. Kallenbach had the time today to make that happen. There's no pressure to do this tonight. So if we need to wait to do it, but that's why you got an email it too, is because they've been very busy. And frankly, it wasn't a board request by the entire board. Dr. Mills was just asking could we look at Bel Air? And so we tried to make that available, and we threw option 3 in there just for fun.
So as a board request, let's vote on this, and then let's vote on the tabling, and then we'll keep things in order. So all in favor of tabling, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Okay. So 5-2 to table, so then we will not vote on that. So what I would say on, as far as board requests, like what we need to make sure of is that only thing I've heard so far this evening, I just want to make sure our admin team has the information, because I think we do, to your point about affecting next year, like there are things about doing this timely. So I think we've talked about it, we need to probably do it at our pre-agenda meeting in July, which would be July 13th. Other than economic disadvantaged data, if possible to get, is there anything else that would help people make a decision one way or the other regarding a vote? Obviously,
Dr. Kingman, not to rush any decision at all, but I know parents are calling me asking me about how they can establish these feeder patterns, so they're making decisions on whether they want to move or not. So again, it's affecting some folks that are making long-term decisions for them, and they're in line waiting for us to come to an ultimate decision on how we proceed. So that's my only concern.
As far as the enrollment, so on Glenn 2026, 2027 coming up, that $11.99, that's enrollment for this upcoming school year?
Projected enrollment
okay.
But this year everyone is allowed to stay where they are feeding.
And just to confirm, that's like one student off of capacity, correct? At the current Glenn? 1,200?
No, we've been running at 12. We were over 13 at one. What the official building capacity is, but we've been this is the lowest projection that Glenn has had in quite a long time.
I just remember in past meeting, you all said 1,200, and the new Glenn will be 1,100.
It is being built for 11 at full capacity, 1,100, but we're targeting 1,000 kids.
Okay.
Yeah. That way we can get each middle school at about 1,000.
Another. Just a little bit of data, this would be a lot easier to calculate. Just what percentage of the students would be outside the 2 miles under both, outside this 2 mile proximity? That would be easier to calculate, I think, right?
That's another question for the demographer, because they have the geocoding.
Because that would be helpful too on A and B, because that's obviously a large part of my argument is the proximity. So that too, the economic disadvantage and then the number of students in both scenarios outside of 2 miles.
Yeah. And I
guess since we're asking all this stuff, I guess could you add to this how many kids will this affect? Saying like, okay, this many in this area are going to go there, as opposed to all of them over here are going to go over there. You know what I'm saying? Like we said earlier, this going to Lee is not all of the Crockett area. It's just a certain little area that would be going over to Lee, as opposed to Bel Air. If you were to move them over there, you'd be moving the whole swath of Bel Air. So, I don't know. You got the numbers in here?
So I guess trying to figure out the number of students which plan impacts the least number of students.
Do you have that in here? Do you have that in here, Michael? Like if you move all the swath of kids from Bel Air to Lee, do you have it in here on the thing you sent today?
The entire
for 26, 27, 27, 28?
The new Crockett boundary will be all of previous Glenn students. So yes.
I don't think it affects all of them, but.
Yeah, they were Bowie and Crockett. So every single one that will be in the Crockett district has been going to Glenn the last 20 years. And Bel Air is no different.
Bel Air's the same way.
Yeah, so it's not saying that.
They've all been going, yeah.
Right, but I'm saying all of the current district, and he said it correctly, but all of the current district is and has been going to Glenn. Mm-hmm. Correct?
The new Crockett all the students that live in the new Crockett, that's been going to Glenn.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
100%, just like Bel Air is 100%.
But there are some students who are currently going to Crockett that after the boundary, they live in Glenmore, or there's part of them that there's some that'll be going to Santa Rita. They're currently going to Crockett, that after the new boundary, they're going to be zoned in a different zone.
Glenmore, yeah.
But what's tricky, I think, Mr. Gallegos, on that is, so whole campuses don't move into middle school. They move a year at a time, and so it's hard to know. Like, it's the 5th grade class that's moving in each year, so it's not like you can't just take the numbers from one whole school and move them over to the middle school, because they feed in year by year, and we don't know. Like, I think the demographer might be able to, but you got to know where all the 5th graders live, rather than like the whole school. So we could say, yeah, a third of them will move. Well, it might not be, because it's 5th grade only that's moving, and then the next year, they could have a real small 4th grade class. So it gets real complicated because they're moving grade by grade.
And I would defer to the demographer, but I do think that what we're looking for is a cohort. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly. I mean, if we knew what, as far as economic disadvantage, what next year's 6th graders would look like, you can extrapolate that. It doesn't have to be, you know what I mean? Like, we can extrapolate from 1 year's worth of data, as opposed to like having to necessarily have 3 years, to calculate every. But we'll defer to we're going to let the demographer do their job.
And what I don't want to do tonight is promise something of the demographer.
No,
So
we understand. We're going to ask the demographer what we can do, and then we will get data points that are available and move forward from there. But do you want to?
I just want to make sure I have the right questions.
Yes. You make sure we have the right questions.
And as far as limiting transfers, is that a board? Will we vote on that, or does the district decide and we just go with it?
So I can speak to that. That would theoretically be a policy that admin, I think, can do without us, but I think it's a big enough decision that the board needs to be, we need to talk about what that is. And so I think the plan we discussed last week was to, once we make these plans, then the admin team can come to us with proposals for a transfer that we can discuss.
Okay.
Does that?
No, that answers my question. I just know there's been a lot of talk about it, and I worry that we're kind of going backwards. Like, if we do stop transfers, how will that affect all of the plans that we're voting on now? Because a lot of these, well, I can't say a lot of schools, some of these campuses that are at a higher number of enrollment, such as Fort Concho, we know that's the school that has the most transfers. When we eliminate transfers, should that happen, then what happens?
Well, so that's why we have to make these lines, so admin can come up with proposals of how that would look with the next steps.
Okay.
And so like when the
No, I know, I get it. I just think it's a little backwards, but.
Yeah. Okay. So Dr. Moran, let's go through questions that you're getting answered to us, so that we make sure that we can do this.
So we're going to plan to answer, what would the economically disadvantaged percentage look like for Crockett and Bel Air for either Plan A or Plan B?
What Lone Star and Glenn using Crockett or Bel Air.
That's right. And then the second question is, what percentage of kids are outside of 2 miles for each one of those plans of the middle school that they would attend? And then the third question I have is, which plan moves the fewest number of kids?
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's. Yeah. All right. So if there's any other questions, like we have it in front of us. We need to make sure, if you have other questions, they need to get to Dr. Moran by this Friday, so we can make sure that we can
we
move
get
forward.
clarification on that one question, the last question? Can you read that one more time? Because I think that's going to be confusing.
Which plan moves the fewest number of kids?
So are we saying to the school they would have fed to before? Because we're not talking about moving kids. We're talking about
future
using the current
But you know what? Don't worry about it, because, I mean, you're right. It is a hard question to answer of how many kids Or like if we go with option A, how many kids over here are going to be going to Lone Star as opposed to how many are going to be going over here? But no, I mean, it's hard to call. So don't worry about it. I'm good. I'm good with that. I'm good with the two questions.
Yeah, but if you can see,
Or did you want to know?
we'll see how it affects
you know
the
what?
least number of kids
If they wanna
based
know-
on the new feeder patterns.
There you go.
Do it not based on the old feeder pattern, the new feeder patterns, because we've already decided that attendance zone.
So the question is, Plan A and Plan B, which moves the fewest number of kids?
Yes.
We can do that.
Okay, and we'll do the best of your abilities, and we'll.
I'm sorry, Plan C's off the table.
We said Plan C does. Yeah, I don't. Unless someone.
Yeah, put C up.
No. Okay, and then.
Make it interesting.
All right. Good. So we'll move forward then. Did you write down what that passed? 5-2, correct? I didn't write it down.
Yep.
5-2. Okay. Thank you. All right. We do need to go into executive session quickly. We're going to do that under consultation with attorneys, which is 551.071, and personnel matters, which is 551.074. All right, we are back from executive session. There were no votes or decisions made. Announcements, we have a finance and it's not really finance anymore, but it's a pre-agenda workshop on July 13th, and we have a regular board meeting on July 20th, 2026. And with that, we're adjourned.